Om Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannawadanam Dhyahet Sarva Vignopashantahe. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Agajanana Patmarkam Gajanana Maharnisham अनेकदन्तं भक्तानाम् एकदन्तमुपास्महे श्रीमहागणपतये नमः गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां श्रीहयग्रीवमुपास्महे श्रीहयग्रीवमूर्तये नमः सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा श्रीमहासरस्वत्यै नमः उमाकोमलहस्ताब्ज सम्भावितललाटकं हिरण्यकुण्डलं वन्दे कुमारं पुष्करस्रजं வெற்றிவேல் முருகனுக்கு ஹரஹரோஹரா லோகவீரியம் மகாபூஜ்யம் சர்வரக்ஷாகரம் விபும் பார்வதி ஹிருதயானந்தம் சாஸ்தாரம் பிரணமாம்யகம் சுவாமியே சரணமையப்பா வாகர்த்தாபிவ சம்பிருக்தோ வாகர்த்த பிரதிபத்தயே ஜகதः பிதரௌ வந்தே பார்வதி பரமேஸ்வரौ ஸ்ரீ பார்வதி பரமேஸ்வராभ्यां நமः कोमलं कूजयन् वेणुं श्यामलोऽयं कुमारकः वेदवेद्यं परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव पीताम्बरं करविराजितचक्रशङ्ख कौमोदकी सरसिजं करुणासमुद्रं राधासहायम् अतिसुन्दरमन्दहासं वातालयेशम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि कृष्णो रक्षतु मां चराचर गुरुः कृष्णं नमस्ये सदा कृष्णेनैव सुरक्षितोऽहमसकृत् कृष्णाय दत्तं मनः कृष्णादेव समुद्भवो मम विभो कृष्णस्य दासोऽस्म्यहं कृष्णे भक्तिरचञ्चलास्तु भगवन् हे कृष्ण तुभ्यं नमः श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं नम्राणां सन्निधत्ते सततमपि पुरस्तैरणभ्यर्थितानपि अर्थान् कामानजस्रं वितरति परमानन्दसान्द्रां गतिं च इत्थं निःशेषनभ्यो निरवधिकफलः पारिजातो हरे त्वं श्रुद्धं तं शक्रवाटी ध्रुममभिलषति व्यर्थमर्त्यव्रजोऽह्यं श्रीगुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं श्रीभट्टपादम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि वंशी विभूषितकरात् नवनीरदाभात् पीताम्बरात् अरुणबिम्बफलादरोष्टात् पूर्णेन्दुसुन्दरमुखात् अरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने കൈരണ്ടും കൂപ്പി ഞാൻ വീണ്ടുമീറക്കുന്നു നീരജലോചന നിന്നോടായി ഏതീനു മഞ്ഞനെ കുമ്പിടേണ്ട തോറും പ്രീതിയിൽ നീ എന്നെ പാലിക്കനായി കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ. Good evening, everyone. Okay, since we have a small group today, so whoever wants can do 89.
I can again.
Okay.
Were there any other volunteers? Sorry.
That's okay.
I think, okay. Okay. Dasakam 89, Vrukasura Vadha Varnanam. रमा जाने जाने यदिह तव भक्तेषु विभवो न सद्यः सम्पद्यस्तदिह मदकृत्वा दशमिनां प्रशान्तिं कृत्वैव प्रदिशसि ततः काममखिलं प्रशान्तेषु क्षिप्रं न खलु भवदीयेच्युतिकथा सद्यः प्रसादरुषितान् विधिशङ्करादीन् केचिद् विभो निजगुणानुगुणं भजन्तः भ्रष्टा भवन्ति बत कष्टमदीर्घदृष्ट्या स्पष्टं वृकासुर उदाहरणं किलास्मिन् शकुनिजः स तु नारदमेकदा त्वरिततोषमपृच्छदधीश्वरं स च दिदेश गिरीशमुपासितुं न तु भवन्तमबन्धुमसाधुषु तपस्तप्त्वा घोरं स खलु कुपितः सप्तमदिने शिरश्छित्त्वा सद्यः पुरहरम् उपस्थाप्य पुरतः अतिक्षुद्रं रौद्रं शिरसि करदानेन निधनं जगन्नाथाद्वव्रे भवति विमुखानां क्व शुभधीः मोक्तारं बन्धमुक्तो हरिणपतिरिव प्राद्रवत्सोऽथ रुद्रं दैत्याद् भीत्या स्म देवो दिशि दिशि वलते पृष्ठतो दत्तदृष्टिः तुष्णीके सर्वलोके तव पदमधिरोक्ष्यन्तमुद्वीक्ष्य शर्वं दूरादेवाग्रतस्त्वं पटुवटुवपुषा तस्थिषे दानवाय भद्रं ते शाकुनेय भ्रमसि किमधुना त्वं पिशाचस्य वाचा सन्देहश्चेन्मदुक्तौ तव किमुना करोषङ्गुलीमङ्गमौलौ इत्थं त्वद्वाक्यमूढः शिरसि कृतकरः सोपतच्छिन्नपातं भ्रंशो ह्येवं परोपासि तुरपि च गतिः शूलिनोऽपि त्वमेव भृगुं किल सरस्वती निकटवासिनस्तापसाः त्रिमूर्तिषु समादिशन्निधिकः सत्त्वतां वेदितुम्
अधिक
अयं
sorry समादिशन्नधिक
समादिशन्नधिक सत्त्वतां वेदितुम् अयं पुनरनादरात् उदितरुद्धरोषे विधौ हरेऽपि च जिहिंसिषौ गिरिजया धृते त्वामगात् सुप्तं रमाङ्कभुवि पङ्कजलोचनं त्वां विप्रे विनिघ्नति पदेन मुदोत्थितस्त्वं सर्वं क्षमस्व मुनिवर्य भवेत् सदा मे त्वत्पादचिह्नमिह भूषणम् इत्यवादीः निश्चित्यते च सुदृढं त्वयि बद्धभावाः सारस्वता मुनिवरा दधिरे विमोक्षम् त्वामेवच्युत पुनश्च्युतिदोषहीनं सत्वोच्चयैकतनुमेव वयं भजामः
the third line tvam evam achyuta
त्वामेवमच्युत
yeah
त्वामेव जगत्सृष्ट्यादौ त्वां निगमनिवहैर्वन्दिभिरिव स्तुतं विष्णो सच्चित् परमरसनिर्द्वैतवपुषं परात्मानं भूमन् पशुपवनिता भाग्यनिवहं परितापश्रान्त्यै पवनपुरवासिन् परिभजे श्रीकृष्णाय परब्रह्मणे नमः.
very nice. I think you got the tunes also right in all the stanzas, so
Yeah, I'm surprised.
good job.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll continue with the 90th chapter, right? So I think this chapter, so the 93rd chapter we are going to do today has got a lot of meaning, so that's going to pretty much, we'll be only able to cover 5 or 6 stanzas today. So 90, I'm just going to condense the meaning, right? So we did up to 6, so I'll just give a summary of the 6, right? So basically in this what essence of this chapter is, this is, like we said, the aim of all the scriptures. That was the title of this Dasakam, right? What Bhatripad is trying to convey in this is, no matter which scripture you pick, no matter which approach you take, it all leads to say that Narayana, you are the top, you are the greatest, you are the supreme. That's the underlying essence of this whole Dasakam, right? So he tries to say from different angles, right? He brings it in. So, and so it's everything is a praise saying you are great because, this said this person said this, right? So it starts off by talking about examples of Brikasura, who we saw in the 89th chapter. He talks about Brigu, who we saw in the 89th chapter. Then it talks about Mohini Avataram, Ambarisha, and saying when you talk about all of these instances or examples that was there, well, different other gods or demigods, everybody who had gotten involved, at the end of the day, Narayana, you are the one who's coming and solving everything. They all come, eventually you are the final person, right, with whom it comes to. So Mohini Avataram also, it came to Narayana. Brigu also, same thing happened. Vrikasura also, same thing happened, right? And this is not to say that everybody has different Ishta Devatam. And it very clearly says you pray to whichever Ishta Devatam you want. There's no doubt about it. At the end of the day, it's just different amshams of the Supreme Brahman. That's all it is, right? But it says, but even amongst all of that, there is something from which everything came, right? There has to be one source. Because like when we saw in the beginning, Brahma also came from the Nabi. Then from Brahma's Bruvor Madhye, Rudra came. Then the 11 Rudras came. So all of them have some sequence in which, and then from Brahma, Saraswati came. So there was some sequence which the scriptures say, right? So it says that supreme person is you, but it's okay. You can pray to anybody you want, no doubt about that, right? And it says even the words, like it breaks the word saying Sada Shiva means Sada means always, Shiva means auspicious. So Sada Shiva means one who's always auspicious. So he says that name is also applicable to you, O Narayana, because you are also always helping out, you're always happy, you're loving and auspicious all the time. So that name applies to you also. And then it says the next word Ishwara means when you think of God but you put it in the form of a person, then you call it Ishwara. It says but you have also come in all these avatars, right, as Krishna and everything, where you have come as a human form. So which means the name Ishwara is also applicable to you. So it kind of does all these comparisons and says that all these names are applicable to you, right? And then it again talks about even within the Trimurtis, it said you, Narayana, is pure Sattva Guna, no doubt about it, right? And then Brahma, of course, who came from your Nabi, he becomes the Hiranya Garbha, the creator. So this Brahma has to have a little bit of passion to create, right? The Rajo Gunam has to be there. Otherwise, he cannot do his duty. So he has a little bit of Rajo Gunam. And Shiva, although he has a lot of Sattva Gunam, he also has a little bit of Tamo Gunam for which he's known. So it again compares and says how you have a pure Sattva Guna everywhere, right? So that kind of goes there. Then in fifth stanza, it talks about Shankaracharya, Shankara Bhagavad Pada, who says that Shankara Bhagavad Pada, he's a sectarian. He doesn't support a particular religion or a group or anything. He's very neutral. He doesn't favor one person over the other, right? But it gives a couple of examples. It talks about how you all probably know the story when Adi Shankaracharya wanted to write the commentary on Sahasranamam, right? So he goes with his Shishyas to the Himalayas, right? With Kashmir. Kashmir is where they had the books where all the scriptures were still there, whoever was inscribed, right? So he went and sent one of his disciples to go and say, you bring me Lalita Sahasranamam, I want to write a commentary on Lalita Sahasranamam. So the Shishya goes, he brings back, but he says it's not Lalita Sahasranamam, it's Vishnu Sahasranamam. He sends him again. So 2-3 times this thing repeats. Then the third time, Adi Shankaracharya is like, I'm telling you to bring Lalita Sahasranamam, you always keep bringing Vishnu Sahasranamam. So that the disciple says that there is a girl standing inside. Every time I ask her to give Lalita Sahasranamam, she keeps giving me this Vishnu Sahasranamam. So then Shankaracharya thinks that, okay, that means I should first start with Vishnu Sahasranamam. I should write the commentary on Vishnu Sahasranamam, and then I should go to Lalita Sahasranamam. So it kind of says even Shankaracharya began with that. And even Shankaracharya, who's kind of Advaitam, who's a believer of Advaitam, also at the end he says, Bhaja Govindam, right? Oh, Mudamate, don't break your head in trying to understand Sanskrit grammar or all of the other things. All you have to do is just Bhaja Govindam, right? And even in the Bhaja Govindam, he says, that Geyam Gita Nama Sahasram, he says, you learn Bhagavad Gita, you chant the Vishnu Sahasranamam, that is sufficient, nothing else is needed. So it kind of compares all those things, right? To say that even he's saying he considers Narayana very high. So that is kind of how all of these comparisons go. Anyway, so I think we stopped at 6, right? Okay. So sorry, let me see here. Lavanya, you can be a student, and then Gopiji, you can be a student. Okay. So stanza 7. Samasta Sare Cha Purana Sangrahe, Visamshayam Twan Mahimaiva Varnyate, Trimurti Yuk Satyapada Tribhagataha. You put a plus, but that Visarga becomes an F there. Tribhagatah Param Padam Te Katitam Na Shulinaha. So the other thing, in the sixth stanza, right? So Sri Shankara also wrote another work called as Prapanchasara. That's why in the Mantra Shastra it says, right? Mantra Shastra in the sixth stanza. So is that actually talks about, it talks a lot about the meditation, the meaning of the pranava mantram and all of that stuff. And even in the meditation, like we saw in the fourth Dasakam, when he talked about the Ashta, the yoga that you have to do, Ashtanga yoga, eventually it says you have to concentrate your mind on nothingness, that supreme Brahman. But the step before that, it says is you think of Lord Narayana with the Chaturbhujam, right, who's sitting on your heart. That is, I don't know if you remember, but I was telling you have to imagine the Lord at the tip of your nose, right, in that size of the Chaturbhujam, and you focus your concentration on the tip of your nose with the Lord standing there, right? So that's why he says, even Shankaracharya said, even for the approach through meditation and approach through pranayama and all of that, the dhyanam, when you are doing, you still have to think of Lord Narayana only for the dhyanam purposes, and then you think of nothingness, right? So that's what it says in sixth stanza. So in the seventh, it says, when it's talking about the whole Brahmandam, when we saw how the Satya Loka, where Brahma and all is in the top loka, the Vaikuntham, remember I said it's beyond that, right? There's only a Karya Vaikuntham which exists inside the Brahmandam for the gods to access, but the actual Vaikuntham is beyond that. So that says your Satya Loka is, your Vaikuntham is beyond all of the existence of the Brahmandam. Samastasare cha Purana Sangrahe Visamshayam Twan Mahimaiva Varnyate Trimurti Yuk Satyapada Tribhagatah Param Padam Te Katitam Nashulinaha.
Samastasare cha Purana Sangrahe Visamshayam Twan Mahimaiva Varnyate Trimurti Yuk Satyaprada Tribhagatah Param Padam Te Katitam Nashulinaha.
Third line Satyapada.
Samastasare cha Purana Sangrahe Visamshayam Twan Mahimaiva Varnyate Trimurti Yuk Satyapada Tribhagatah Param Padam Te Katitham Nashulinaha.
Samastasare cha Purana Sangrahe Visamshayam Twan Mahimaiva Varnyate Trimurti Yuk Satyapada Tribhagatah Param Padam Te Kadidham Nashulinaha. Samastasare cha Purana Sangrahe Visamshayam Twan Mahimaiva Varnyate Trimurti Yuk Satyapada Tribhagatah Param Padam Te Kadidham Nashulinaha.
Stanza 8. Yat Brahma Kalpa Iha Bhagavata Dvitiya, put a plus, Skandhoditam Vapur Anavritam, if you want to break it, Vapur Anavritam Isha Dhatre Tasyeva Nama Hari Sharva Mukham Jagada, Sri Madavaha, put the ish, Sri Madavash Shiva Paropi Purana Sare. So it tells that, this, what do you call, this, one of the main persons, Sri Madhava, when he was actually praising Shiva, right? And in that, he was a big devotee of Shiva and who had written this script called Purana Sara. Even in that, even the Sri Madhava said, at the time of Brahma Kalpa, when the first day of Brahma came, and Brahma, came out of the Lord himself, the form that Brahma saw was that of you, O Narayana, in Vaikuntham. So because when Brahma came, there was absolutely nothingness, right? And then there was only the Supreme Lord, and Brahma came. So even this Madhava, who is a big proponent of Shiva, was saying that the original existence was just of Narayana, which is what even Brahma saw. So that's what it's also said in Bhagavata Dvitiya Skandam. It's also the same thing which was said in Bhagavatam second canto. The same thing he has also said in that. Yad Brahma Kalpa iha Bhagavata Dvitiya Skandhoditam Vapuranavritamīsha Dhatre Tasyaiva Nama Hari Sharva Mukam Jagada Srimadava Shiva Paropi Purana Sare.
Yad Brahma Kalpa iha Bhagavata Dvitiya Skandhotitam Vapur Anavritamīsha Dhatre Tasyaiva Nama Hari Sharva Mukham Jagada Srimadava Shiva Paropi Purana Sare. Yad Brahma Kalpa iha Bhagavata Dvitiya Skandhotitam Vapur Anavritamīsha Dhatre Tasyaiva Nama Hari Sharva Mukham Jagada Srimadava Shiva Paropi Purana Sare.
Yad Brahma Kalpa iha Bhagavadadvitiya Skandhotitam Punaravritamisha Dhatre Tasyaiva Nama Hari Sharva Mukham Jagada Srimadhava Shiva Paropi Purana Sare.
First line, Yad Brahma Kalpa.
Okay. Yad Brahma Kalpa iha Bhagavadadvitiya Skandhotitam Vapunavritam Isha Dhatre.
That word Vapuranavritam.
Vapuranavritam Isha Dhatre Tasyaiva Nama Hari Sharva Mukham Jagada Srimadhava Shiva Paropi Purana Sare.
Ye Swa Prakritya Nuguna Girisham Bhajante, Tesham Phalam Hi Dridayaiva Tadiya Bhaktya, Vyaso Hi Tena Kritavan Adhikari. You can break that now if you want. Kritavan Adhikari Hetoho, Skandadikeshu Tava Hani Vachorta Vadaihi. So he says, there's different ways of arguments, but there are different people who may want to pray to different gods according to what they like, according to their natural preferences and tendencies. So it says that's why even Vyasa and everybody has said that you can still go pray to Lord Shiva or anybody else you want, and you will, whatever blessings you're going to get, you will still get. So he's kind of also saying doesn't mean that other gods are not important or anything, that even Vyasa and everybody has also said that you can spiritually progress any way you want by praying to any god, right? Ye Swaprakrityανuguna girisham bhajante tesham phalam hi dhridayaiva tadiya bhaktya vyaso hi tena kritavan adhikari hetoho skandadikeshu tavahani vachortavadaihi.
Ye Swaprakritya Nuguna Girisham Bhajante Tesham Phalam Hi Dhridayaiva Tadiya Bhaktya Vyaso Hi Tena Kritavan Adhikari Hetoho Skandadikeshu Tavahani Vachortavadaihi. Ye Swaprakritya Nuguna Girisham Bhajante Tesham Phalam Hi Dhridayaiva Tadiya Bhaktya Vyaso Hi Tena Kritavan Adhikari Hetoho Skandadikeshu Tavahani Vachortavadaihi.
Vachortavadaihi.
Okay, sorry. Vachortavadaihi.
Ye Swaprakrityanuguna girisham bhajante tesham phalam hi dridhayaiva tadiya bhaktya vyaso hi tena kritavan adhikari hetoho स्कान्दादिकेषु तव हानिवचोऽर्थवादैः ये स्वप्रकृत्यनुगुणा गिरीशं भजन्ते तेषां फलं हि दृढयैव तदीयभक्त्या व्यासो हि तेन कृतवान् अधिकारिहेतोः स्कान्दादिकेषु तव हानिवचोऽर्थवादैः
Bhutartha Kirtir Anuvada. That's easy to break it. Kirtir Anuvada Viruddha Vadau, comma. Tredartha Vada Gatayaha, put a ihs on Gatayah, Kalu Rochanartaha, Skandadikeshu Bahavotra Viruddha Vadaha, put a visarga there at the end and comma, Viruddha Vadaha. Next line is goes away. Tvattama Sattva Pari Bhutyupa Shikshanadhyaha. So again, it just says, in this case that there are other scriptures where it might talk about the other tamasic nature of you, O Narayana, but says, but there are ways that you can actually prove that, by different ways that's not correct, he says. He says, because, even when the Hiranyaksha Vadam happened, Narasimha Avataram happened, the last stanza, if you still remember, it says that you proved that you by nature are not angry. You just exhibited that nature to scare Hiranyakashipu. Inherently, Narayana, you are not an angry person. You cannot be an angry person, because when the moment you saw Prahlada, then you immediately change. You're not, but to scare Hiranyakashipu and everything, you took that form, right? You acted as if you're angry. So similarly, he says, so in other scriptures, they might have said that you have a tamasic nature. He says that's not appropriate. That's because you might have acted that way for different purposes. Inherently, you are purely sattvic gunam. भूतार्थकीर्तिरनुवाद विरुद्धवादौ त्रेधार्थवादगतयः खलु रोचनार्थाः स्कान्दादिकेषु बहवोऽत्र विरुद्धवादाः त्वत्तामसत्त्वपरिभूत्युपशिक्षणाध्याः
भूतार्थकीर्तिरनुवादविरुद्धवादौ त्रेधार्थवादगतयः खलु रोचनार्ताः स्कान्दादिकेषु बहवोऽत्र विरुद्धवादाः त्वत्तामसत्त्वपरिभूत्युपशिक्षणाद्याः.
The last word, paribhutyupa shikshanadhyaha.
Okay. Paribhutyupa
Yeah.
भूतार्थकीर्तिरनुवादविरुद्धवादौ त्रेधार्थवादगतयः खलु रोचनार्ताः स्कान्दादिकेषु बहवोऽत्र विरुद्धवादाः त्वत्तामसत्त्वपरिभूत्युपशिक्षणाद्याः.
भूधार्थकीर्तिरनुवादविरुद्धवादौ त्रेतार्थवादगतयः खलु रोचनार्थाः स्कान्दादिकेषु बहवोऽत्र विरुद्धवादाः त्वत्तामसत्त्वपरिभूत्युपशिक्षणाद्याः भूधार्थकीर्तिरनुवादविरुद्धवादौ त्रेधार्थवादगतयः खलु रोचनार्थाः स्कान्दादिकेषु बहवोऽत्र विरुद्धवादाः त्वत्तामसत्त्वपरिभूत्युपशिक्षणाद्याः.
Stanza 11. यत्किञ्चिदप्यविदुषापि विभो मयोक्तं तन्मन्त्रशास्त्रवचनाद्यविदृष्टमेव व्यासोक्तिसारमय भागवतोपगीत क्लेशान् विधूय कुरु भक्तिभरं परात्मन्. So in the very end, what the part is kind of saying, that I may have said a few things out of my ignorance, when he's comparing all these things, right? Saying Shankara meant this person meant this. He might have, out of my ignorance, I might have actually said some things which may not have been appropriate. But he said I was only repeating what was there in in the various scriptures. This mantra sara, the various scripts which he had picked, he selectively went and picked some, right? And said I might have just picked out of ignorance, I might have picked it. However, he says in the third line, Vedavyasa, who has done who compiled the Vedas, who did the Mahabharata, everything, the pinnacle of his work was when he composed Srimad Bhagavatam. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, all he did was he praised you, right? So he says, even if all the things I said above were not right, but when Vyasa, he composed, that's why he says, Vyasokti Sara, the essence of everything that Vyasa did is in Srimad Bhagavatam, and that is Bhagavatopagita. In that, he praised you. So I think whatever, even if I had made some mistake in the previous one, this one overrides it, right? So that's how he wraps it up and says, please eradicate all my ailments and give me supreme devotion. Bhakti Bharam Paratman. Please confer on me supreme devotion. Yet kinchit apya vidushapi. It's easy to break at the da. Kinchit apya vidushapi vibho mayoktam, comma, tan mantra shastra vachanadhyabi drishtameva. So if you want to make the dya, you can put a it and a ya there if you're not able to break it. So vachanadhyabi drishtameva vyasokti sara maya bhagavatopa gita, comma, kleshan vidhuya kuru bhakti bharam paratman. Yatkinchidapya vidushapi vibho mayoktam tanmantra shastra vachanadhya vidrishtameva vyasokti saramaya bhagavatopagita kleshan vidhuya kuru bhakti bharam paratman.
Yatkinchidapya vidushapi vibho mayoktam tanmantra shastra vachanadhya vidrishtameva vyasokti saramaya bhagavadopagita kleshan vidhuya kuru bhakti bharam paratman. Yatkinchidapya vidushapi vibho mayoktam tanmantra shastra vachanadhya vidrishtameva vyasokti saramaya bhagavadopagita kleshan vidhuya kuru bhakti bharam paratman.
Yatkinchidapya vidushapi vibho mayoktam tanmantra shastra vachanadhyabhidrishtameva vyasokti saramaya bhagavatopagita kleshan vidhuya kuru bhakti bharam paratman. Yatkinchidapya vidushapi vibho mayoktam tanmantra shastra vachanadhyabhidrishtameva vyasokti saramaya bhagavatopagita kleshan vidhuya kuru bhakti bharam paratman.
Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. It's 90. Okay. All right. So let's go to 93. So this chapter is a little bit of a loaded chapter, right? In terms of the meanings and the text also. So it is Lessons from 25 Gurus. That's the title of this chapter. In the Sanskrit, it says Pancha Vimshater Gurubhya Shikshaniyasya Varnanam. Right. So before whenever I teach this chapter, right, I always tell a very small story to start it off for those who know it. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, right, once somebody went and asked him some question, right, and about whether he says, okay, my son is eating too much candy, right, or too much sugar. So he says, you advise him not to eat sugar, right? So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, you come after 1 month, right? And then that person came after 1 month and said, you told me to come after 1 month. My son is eating too much candy. You please give him some advice. So he just said, don't eat sugar. Sugar is bad for you. He said, if you could have told this 1 month back, right? He said, because I myself did not have that control 1 month back, so I cannot give advice to somebody else if I am not following that, right? So I always say that prefix because this chapter is going to be a lot of advice and lessons, right? And so I'll always prefix by say, I am not following that either, because this is kind of, only when you reach that level. So Bhattacharya will start off by saying, what is that, where he wants to get to. And then he talks about how you can get there from the various lessons from 25 different gurus, and you'll see who the gurus are as we kind of go through it. It's very interesting. So it'll be good, interesting, and comparison examples, but it'll be a lot of philosophical stuff, right? So stanza 1. Bandhusneham vijahyam tavahi karunaya त्वय्युपावेशितात्मा सर्वं त्यक्त्वा चरेयं सकलमपि जगद् वीक्ष्य मायाभिलासं नानात्वाद् भ्रान्तिजन्यात् सति खलु गुणदोषावबोधे विदर्भा व्यासेदो वा कथं तौ त्वयि निहितमतेः गीतवैषम्यबुद्धेः. So when Uddhava, when Krishna was about to depart, right, from his incarnation, so, he went and told Uddhava, said, hey, Krishna, I came to know that you are about to leave, right, this earth. And Uddhava requests Krishna, please don't leave, right, stay with me. So at the time, Krishna then tells him that, Uddhava, like the number one, Uddhava has already gotten a lot of knowledge and everything. But then Krishna then gives Uddhava some advice. It's called Uddhava Gita. It comes in the 11th skandam of Bhagavatam, right? Full skandam for that. And some of that are what is going to show up in this chapter and the next chapter. It's kind of, but has mixed it together, right? So at first, Krishna then starts off by saying the number one problem everybody has is you have too much love towards your family and your relatives, right? And he says, Uddhava, you love me so much. You love me as your close friend. You love me as someone who has spent a lot of time with. But he says, you cannot be attached to me as a relation, as a friend, right? And he says the first step for you to get yourself enlightened and liberated, you should not have that attachment towards your kith and kin, family and friends that deeply. That's how he starts. And that's what in Bhantri, but first request saying, please Bandhu Sneham, I give me the ability to not get too attached to my love and towards my relatives and everybody, right? And the second, then he goes on to say that, eventually, when I'm completely freed up from all of this and I want to be roaming around, then everything we see today, right, is the kind of it's a like it says, it's a reflection. So, for example, one example, it comes in Bhagavatam is it says when a lady loves a guy, loves a person, right, or other way around, doesn't matter. Every day that person wears a different cloth and comes. So does it mean this lady or the husband thinks of them as a different person and then the love changes? No, because if they love him, it doesn't matter what cloth they wear, they still love them as a person, right? That's how the general rule is, right? So it says similarly, right, whatever we are perceiving through our eyes, things which look different to us is equivalent to somebody looking at somebody wearing different clothes. That's what it is. At the end of the day, it's the same person, right? So similarly, he says, give me the ability to be able to discriminate between all of these things and not look at everybody and everything which is as very different, because I have to somehow come to the realization it's all of that is your Maya and it's all you. So somehow you have to give me that ability to be able to discriminate from that also, right? And then he says, that the person who is able to understand that will never have a concept or worry about what is good, what is bad. Because at the end of the day, they're seeing you in everybody and you're seeing you in everything. So there's nothing like something is good or something is bad. We always separate out all our material things as I like this, I don't like this is good, this is bad. That's because we are not able to see you in everything. So please give me that ability to be able to see you in everything. So I'm not differentiating against what is good or what is bad, right? That's how it starts. Then it will go with the lessons. So Bandhu Sneham Bijahyam Tava Hi Karunaya, Tvayupaveshitatma, can't break it, Tvayupaveshitatma, Sarvam Tyaktva Chareyam, Sakalamapi Jagad Vikshya Maya Vilasam. Bandhusneham Bijahyam Tavahi Karunaya Tvayupaveshitatma Sarvam Tyaktva Chareyam Sakalamapi Jagad Vikshya Maya Vilasam.
Bandhu sneham vijahyam tavahi karunaya tvayuppaveshitatma sarvam tyaktva chareyam sakalamapi jagat vikshya vilasam. Bandhu sneham vijahyam tavahi
And the ha is a half ha, Bijahyam.
Bandhu sneham vijahyam tavahi karunaya त्वय्युपावेशितात्मा सर्वं त्यक्त्वा चरेयं सकलमपि जगद्वीक्ष्य मायाविलासम्
बन्धुस्नेहं विजह्यां तव हि करुणया त्वय्युपावेशितात्मा सर्वं त्यक्त्वा चरेयं सकलमपि जगदीक्ष्यमायाविलासम् बन्धुस्नेहं विजह्यां तव हि करुणया त्वय्युपावेशितात्मा सर्वं त्यक्त्वा चरेयं सकलमपि जगदीक्ष्यमायाविलासम्.
That first line after Vijahyam, there is no pause. I think because you are pausing, that's why the line is not landing, right?
Yeah, because I was not sure that I would make a mistake with that. So
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah. So, Nanatvad Bhranti Janyat, comma, Sati Khalu Guna Doshavabhode Vidhirva, comma, Vyasedho Va Katam Tau Tvai Nihita Matehe. So that ir, which is on top of the next word, remove that, put a visarga, comma, Matehe, comma, Vita Vaishamya Buddhehe. So he says, the other thing which he kind of says here, like all the restrictions and prohibitions that are there in all the scriptures where it says something is good, something is bad, don't do this, don't do bad. It will apply as long as you are seeing two things. The moment you don't see two things and you're seeing Advaitam, you're seeing the Lord in everything and everyone, he says those rules of scriptures don't apply to you anymore because you're not separating out, right? So that means you have to reach that stage where you're not separating out. Till that point, it says there are certain good things, there are certain bad things. Once you reach that stage, then there is no good or bad, everything is the same. Nanhatvad Bhranti Janyat Sati Khalu Guna Doshavabodhe Vidirva Vyasedo Vakatam Tau Tvai Nihita Matehe Vita Vaishamya Buddhehe.
नानात्वाद् भ्रान्तिजन्यात् सति खलु गुणदोषावबोधे विधिर्वा व्यासेदो वा कथं तौ त्वयि निहितमतेः वीतवैषम्यबुद्धेः नानात्वाद् भ्रान्तिजन्यात् सति खलु गुणदोषावबोधे विधिर्वा व्यासेदो वा कथं तौ त्वयि निहितमतेः वीतवैषम्यबुद्धेः.
नानात्वाद् भ्रान्तिजन्यत् सति खलु गुणदोषावबोधे विधिर्वा व्यासेधो वाः कथं तौ त्वयि निहितमतेः वीतवैषम्यबुद्धेः नानात्वाद् भ्रान्तिजन्यात् सति खलु गुणदोषावबोधे विधिर्वा व्यासेधो वाः कथं तौ त्वयि निहितमतेः वीतवैषम्यबुद्धेः.
That's it too. Kshutrishna lopamatre satata kritadiyo jantavas santyanantaha tebhyo vijnanavatvat purushaiha varaha tajjanir durlabhaiva tatrapyatmatmanasyat suhrudapi charipuhu yastvainyastachetaha tapo chitte rupayam smarati sahi suhrute swatma vairi tatonyah. So, you all know this, Maslow's pyramid of needs, right? First, you start with basic security and food, right? And then it kind of keeps going, then shelter, everything comes, and then finally you have everything, right? So similarly here, it starts off by telling, there are a lot of creatures in this world when they start off with, right? That they have absolutely, you think of vegetation, right? They don't even move. They're just stationary. The trees are just stationary, but they can also consume things, right? But they cannot act on anything. They're just stationary. Then you kind of go up on species of life, which are extremely foolish, and all they are able to do, right, is they only can smell with their, that's the only, sense that works for them, right? They can only smell and look for food. Then you come up on different species who can actually eat, who can hunt, but then they do not have their mind to think and act and all that as much. Then you kind of go through different levels of evolution. So here Bhattacharya is saying this this janmam that you have got as a human form is durlabham. It's not that easy to get, right? He says you don't realize that you actually gone through so many janmams to finally get this janmam of a human, where you are able to discriminate with your mind, see what is good, see what is bad, and then act. And you have complete free will, right? And what we do, he says, is we always blame somebody else for something that doesn't work, right? He says you always say that, it's because of that person that I'm not able to make progress in my life, right? He says your biggest enemy, it says, is it's you, right? And he says, because if you are complete, it's your choice whether you want to be devoted to the Lord or not. Nobody is stopping you from doing it. He says the moment you decide that you want to be devoted to the Lord, then all of the other things will automatically fall in place. So he says that's what he's kind of saying, is that this, you got such a durlabham, you got such a life which is so hard to get, so don't put it to waste. And then the only way for you to get rid of all your sorrows is to be completely devoted to the Lord, and you yourself are your own enemy, because if you decide to do it, you are your best friend. If you decide not to pray, you are your worst enemy. So he says, so you are your best friend and your best enemy here. Kshut trishna lopa matre, comma, satata krita dhiyo jantavaha, put is jantavas santyanantaha, put a visarga comma. Next line is goes away. Tebhyo vijnana vattvat. So double it, vattvat. Purusha iha varaha. So that is there. Remove it, put a visarga comma, varaha. Taj janir durlabhaiva. Kshutrishna lopamatre satata krita dhiyo jantava santyanantaha tebhyo vijnanavatvat purusha iha varaha tajjanir durlabhaiva.
KshuturshanaLopamatre satatakrita dhiyo jantavas santyanantaha tebhyo vijnanavatavat purusha iha varaha tajjanir durlabhaiva.
Second line la purusha iha varaha.
Varaha. KshuturshanaLopamatre satatakrita dhiyo jantavas santyanantaha tebhyo vijnanavatat vijnanavatvat purusha iha varaha tajjanir durlabhaiva.
Lavanya, in the first line la kshutrish ish sound. You are saying sha, full sha. You are saying that's why it's not landing there.
Okay.
Kshutrishna.
Krishna. Okay.
Kutrishna lopamatre satatakrita dhiyo jantavas santyanantaha tebhyo vijnanavatvat purusha iha vara tajjanir durlabhaiva.
Purusha iha varaha.
Purusha iha varaha. Okay. Kshutrishna lopamatre satatakrita dhiyo jantavas santyanantaha tebhyo vijnanavatvat purusha iha varaha tajjanir durlabhaiva.
Tatrapyatmatmana. You cannot break it because it's tatra api atma, multiple words there. So tatrapyatmatmanaha is there, put a is, matmanas syat suhrudapi cha ripuhu, put a visarga and comma. Next word on top of that, yastvai, there is a ir that goes away. Yastvai nyasta chetaha, again visarga comma. Next line is, if you have it, that goes away. Tapo chitter upayam smarati sahi suhrit, comma, swatma vairi tathonyaha. Tatrapyatmatmanasyat suhrudapi cha ripuhu yastvainyasta chetaha tapo chitter upayam smarati sahi suhrit swatma vairi tathonyaha.
Tatrapyatmat manasyat suhrudapi cha rupuhu yastvayi nyastachetaha तापोचित्तेर उपायं स्मरति सहि सुहृत् स्वात्मा वैरी ततोऽन्यः
Tatonyah. Yeah.
तत्राप्यात्मात्मना स्यात् सुहृदपि च रिपुः यस्त्वयि न्यस्तचेताः तापोचित्तेरुपायं स्मरति सहि सुहृत् स्वात्मवैरी ततोऽन्यः
तत्राप्यात्मात्मनः स्यात् सुहृदपि च रिपुः यस्त्वयि न्यस्तचेताः तत्तापोचित्तेरुपायं स्मरति साहि सुहृत् स्वात्मवैरी ततोऽन्यः तत्राप्यात्मात्मनः स्यात् सुहृदपि च रिपुः यस्त्वयि न्यस्तचेताः तापोचित्तेरुपायं स्मरति सहि सुहृत् स्वात्मवैरी ततोऽन्यः.
We'll switch halfway. Rupa, you can be a student, and Prabha, you can be a student. Stanza 3. Tvatkarunhe pravritte kaiva nahi guruhu lokavrittepi bhuman sarva krantapi bhumir nahi chalati tatah satshamam shikshaheyam griniyamisha tat vishaya parichayepya prasaktim samirade vyaptat vanchatmano me gagana guru vashad dhatu nirlepata cha. It says Tvat Karunya. If I have your grace, O Lord, anything can be my guru, right? And that's how it starts here. So when when Krishna is giving this Uddhava Gita, when he's into Uddhava, he tells a story, right, about a king called Yadu, who then goes to a Brahmana, who's very learned, who seems to know everything. And he says, but oh Brahmana, I don't see you performing all these religious things or any of those things, but you seem to know everything. He said, how is that? So, and then the Brahmana actually tells the story to Yadu, which Krishna tells Uddhava, which Bhattacharya is just saying as individual stories to us here, where he says, for me, the entire world is my guru. And he talks about 24 different gurus that he sees. So we'll start, so this then starts with that. So first he talks about, the, what you call earth, trees, mountain, and all of that, right? So he says, mountains, the mountain, like we saw in Govardhan also, it gives rain, it gives the streams, comes from that. Trees grow on that, fruits come from it. It doesn't expect anything. Trees also give us fruits, all these creepers give us vegetables. They don't expect anything. The most patient person in this world is Mother Earth, because you can stamp on it, you can kick it, you can spit on it, you can throw garbage. Mother Earth never responds back to you. Guru says, so by looking at all of this, I learn that I should always give things to others and not expect anything in return. And I should have the patience like Mother Earth, right? So he says, that is my first guru, right? Then second, he says is wind, right? So he says, like everything, we say that, I was walking and then I caught the bad quality from someone, right? And then I caught the good quality from someone. We always say that. He says, when you look at the wind or the air, when it goes through things which has got a bad smell, yes, for a period of time, for a distance, it carries that bad smell. But very quickly it gets dispersed. It's not like the bad smell which it caught there, it is still lingering on right now, right? It disperses it off, right? When I walk in my neighborhood, sometimes I smell biryani, coming out of the house, right? But I just walk 10 more steps and the smell is gone, right? Because it's got dispersed out, right? So but it says you have to be like that. It says, do not carry this attachments of anything that you have, right, for a long time, and be like the wind and learn how to discard everything off, right? So that is the second guru, he says. The third guru, which is talking in here, is the sky. So he says, when we look at here, we're seeing the space or the sky in a particular way. Then when you go to some other city, we go to St. Louis, also I see a similar blue sky space, right? So while here I only see what is here, when I go to St. Louis, I see what is there. but the sky or the space is all pervading over the entire earth. Right? It's common for the entire earth. When you look at the size of the earth and you look at the size of the space is all pervading, right? And the earth is a very small portion. But for me, it looks so big, it's as if this is for me, right? See, similarly, that's how the soul is. The Paramatma is there across everybody. But we look at it in each person and it might look different because I look different than you. But it is the same space which is pervading all over the earth. Similarly, it's the same Paramatma who's pervading over everybody else. So that is the third lesson I'm learning by looking at the sky. So those are the three gurus in this stanza. So Tvat Karunye Pravritte Ka Iva Nahi Guruhu. Put a Visarga comma. Next on Loka, that ir goes away. Loka Vrittepi Bhumanne, comma. Sarva Krantapi Bhumir Nahi Chalati Tataha. You can remove that is, put a Visarga comma. Sorry. Satkshamam Shikshayeyam. Tvatkarunhe Pravritte Kaiva Nahi Guruhu. Loka Vrittepi Bhumanne. Sarva Krantapi Bhumir Nahi Chalati Tataha. Sakshamam Shikshayeyam.
त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते क इव नहि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्नहि चलति ततः सत्क्षमां शिक्षयेयम् त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते क इव नहि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्नहि चलति ततः सत्क्षमां शिक्षयेयम्
त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते कैव नहि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्नहि चलति ततः सत्क्षमां शिक्षयेयम् त्वत्कारुण्ये प्रवृत्ते कैव नहि गुरुः लोकवृत्तेऽपि भूमन् सर्वाक्रान्तापि भूमिर्नहि चलति ततः सक्षमां शिक्षयेयम्
Griniyam Isha, comma. Tat Tad Vishaya. Tat Tad Vishaya. Parichayepya. That's one word. Parichayepya Prasaktim Samirat, comma. Vyaptat one in sound. Vyaptat one Chatmano me, comma. Gagana Guru Vashat Bhatu Nirle Patacha. Grinhiyami Shap Tat Vishaya Parichayepya Prasaktim Samirat Vyaptat Panchatmano me Gagana Guru Vashat Bhatu Nirle Patacha.
गृह्णीयामीश तद्विषय परिचयेप्य प्रसक्तिं समीराद व्याप्तत्वं चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु निर्लेपताच्च गृह्णीयामीश तद्विषय परिचयेप्य परसक्तिं समीराद व्याप्तत्वं चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु निर्लेपताच
गृह्णीयामीश तद्विषय परिचेयाप्यप्रसक्तिं समीरात् व्याप्तत्वं चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु निर्लेपता च गृह्णीयामीश तद्विषय परिचेयाप्यप्रसक्तिं समीरात् व्याप्तत्वं चात्मनो मे गगनगुरुवशात् भातु निर्लेपता च.
Third line after Grinniyamisha, there is a comma. Okay. Third line. Answer 4. Swachchasyam pavanoham madura udakavat vannivanmasma grinham sarvaninopi dosham tarushutameva mam sarvabhuteshvavehyam pushtirnashtikkalanam shashina ivatanoho natmanostiti vidyam tohyadibhyastamartandavadapi cha tanushvekatam tvatprasadhat. So we saw 3 in the last one. This one will have 4 gurus, right? So first he talks about, water, right? So if you have been to, like Alaska, or you're going to Rishikesh, or even we see the water that comes from the glacier, right? It is crystal clear water, right? And it is completely uncontaminated water that is actually coming in there, right? And that water also, even otherwise also the water creates, you hear the sound of water to go to sleep. It creates a vibration. Being around water makes people very happy, right? Even if you hear the waves of the beach, right, it puts you to sleep. And anytime you come in contact with the clean water, pure water, you also get cleaned, right? You get cleansed with it, right? He says that reminds me of the pure sages, he says. So when I'm with a person who's so devoted and it is a sage, just being around that sage automatically gives you that vibration, right? And you feel really good being next to them, and you also get cleansed, internally cleansed. Water cleanses you externally, the sage cleanses you internally. So that's what I'm learning from the pure water, is to be like a pure sage, being around whom everybody else also gets purified, right? Just like how the water does, right? That is with that. Then it comes to fire. So a lot of this is going to be related to food, because the food is the biggest issue that we all have, right? Not able to control our senses, not able to control the food, right? So he says, like the fire, when you do a homam, whatever you put into the homam, right, that is natural, organic, right? I'm not talking about inorganic things. So anything organic you put into the food, fire, it is going to burn, right? Kodakatte, whether you made or I made, whether it's right or wrong, it is still the fire is going to consume that kodakatte if you put into it. And no matter what you put, apple you put, it's going to consume. Rice you put, habis, it's going to consume, right? So he says that is how you should be. Now I'll clarify here. That doesn't mean whatever you give, I'm going to eat. That's not the intention. You should say, whatever I get, I should eat. I should not go and demand. And if I don't get something, then I should not eat it, because I should assume that is the God has decided today, this is what I'm going to get, right? And not go and complain saying I want something else, right? That way I said in the beginning of the chapter, it doesn't apply to me either. So I'll kind of clarify that, right? So it says like a fire, I should consume what comes my way, right? That is the other thing he says on the fire, which is the second one in this thing. Then the third thing in this, he talks about the moon, right? So he says, when all of us start really as a small baby, we then go through toddler, then we go become a youth, and then we become an adult, then become old, and so he says, these are just like the waxing and the waning of the moon. So while we look at the moon as waxing and waning, taking different sizes, the moon size does not change, right? It's only because how the sunlight is falling on the moon that we are seeing the waxing and the waning of the moon. So he says, similarly, your soul is always the same. It doesn't age. It is not young. It is not anything. It is just that your outer body, it appears like you're, waxing and waning the moon. But just like the moon being the same, the soul is the same, right? Nothing changes on that front. Then he talks about the next here is the sun. So sun, when the sunlight falls on the water, it looks a particular way. When it falls on your eyes, you close your eyes because it's so bright. When it falls on the mirror, it looks different. When it falls on oil, it will look on metal, it looks different. But at the end of the day, the sun is the same sun, but it just reflects different depending on where it is falling, right? So he says, similarly, the Paramatma who's there and everybody is the same. Just the reflection of the Paramatma is different when he is in different jivas. That's all. He says, but the Paramatma, sun is the same, but it looks different depending on where it's getting reflected, right? So he says, that's what I'm learning from the sun. So that is the fourth guru in this. So 4 plus 3, 7 gurus so far. So Swachchaha, put is Swachchas Syam Pavanoham, comma, Madhura Udaka Vad Vanni Vanma Sma Grinnam, sound, Grinnam, comma, Sarva Ninopi Dosham, comma, tarushu tamiva mam sarva bhuteshvaveyaam. Swachchasyam pavanoham madura udakavat vannivanmasma ghrannam sarvaninopi dosham tarushu tamiva mam sarva bhuteshvaveyaam.
स्वच्छस्यां पावनोऽहं मधुर उदकवद् वह्निवन्मास्म गृह्णां सर्वानीनोऽपि दोषं तरुषु तमिव मां सर्वभूतेष्वेयाम् स्वच्छस्यां पावनोऽहं मधुर उदकवद् वन्मास्म गृह्णां सर्वानीनोऽपि दोषं तरुषु तमिव मां सर्वभूतेष्वेयाम्
स्वच्छस्यां पावनोऽहं मधुर उदकवद्वह्निवन्मास्म गृह्णां सर्वान्नीनोऽपि दोषं तरषु तमिव मां सर्वभूतेष्वेयाम् स्वच्छस्यां पावनोऽहं मधुर उदकवद्वह्निवन्मास्म गृह्णां सर्वान्नीनोऽपि दोषं तरुषु तमिव मां सर्वभूतेष्वेयाम्
Pushtir nashtihi, put a sound, nashtih kalanam shashina iva tanoho, put a visarga there and comma tanoho. Next line on top of the natmano, there's a ir that goes away. Natmano stiti vidyam, comma toyadi vyasta martanda vadapicha, comma tanush vekatam tvat prasadat. This is by your grace, let me know, let me also understand all, get lessons from all of these things, right? Pushtirnashte kalanam shashina ivatanoho natmanostiti vidyam toyadi vyasthamartandavadapicha tanushvekatam tvat prasadat.
पुष्टिर्नष्टिः कलानां शशिन इव तनोः नात्मनोस्तीति विद्यां तोया वदपि च तोया दिव्यस्त मार्ताण्ड वदपि च तनुषवेकतां त्वत्प्रसादात्.
Rupa, tanushvekatam. Tanusha or something.
तनुष्वेकतां त्वत्प्रसादात्. पुष्टिर्नष्टिः कलानां शशिन इव तनोः नात्मनोस्तीति विद्यां तोया दिव्यास्तमार्ताण्ड वदपि च तनुष्वेकतां त्वत्प्रसादात्.
Toyadi vyasta. I think you said vyasta. Vyasta. Toyadi vyasta martanda.
Toyadi vyasta martanda.
पुष्टिर्नष्टिः कलानां शशिन इव तनोः नात्मनोस्तीति विद्यां तोयादिव्यस्तमार्ताण्डवदपि च तनुष्वीकतां त्वत्प्रसादात्. पुष्टिर्नष्टिः कलानां शशिन इव तनोः नात्मनोस्तीति विद्यां तोयादिव्यस्तमार्ताण्डवदपि च तनुष्वीकतां त्वत्प्रसादात्.
Tanushvekatam.
वेकतां, sorry.
Sounds fine. Snehadvyadhata putra pranayamritakapotayito masma bhuvam praptam prashnan saheyakshutam apishayuvat sindhuvat syamagadaha mapaptam yoshidadau shikinishalabhavat bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam Kintu tadvad dhana chayana vashan mahamisha pranesham. So a lot of them coming here, but I'll try to condense it, not stretch too much. So first he starts with, he tells a story about a pigeon in the forest where, there's a male pigeon, there's a female pigeon. And the female pigeon says, I want to build a nest. So the male pigeon goes and brings all the stuff that is required to build the nest and everything. And he does whatever the female pigeon wants. And then they have kids, they have baby pigeons. So one day, the male pigeon goes to hunt, right, to get food, right? When he comes back, suddenly he sees that the hunter has captured the baby pigeons, right? So now he's so attached to his family that he wants to go rescue. But it's a risk because you go to rescue, you're also going to get caught, right? But at that time, the attachment to the family overwhelms him so much that he doesn't think logically, right? And he also goes and tries to rescue, and he also gets caught. The mother also gets caught, and all the entire family gets caught. So this is for the first line, Bandhu Sneham Vijakya. He says, give me the ability to not get so attached to family and thing, because that will prevent me from, moving forward in my journey of liberation, right? That's why all the people who got liberated, they all either didn't marry or they moved away from their family. Because the more you're attached to the family, the more difficult it is to leave, relatively speaking, right? So that is the example that he's talking here about the pigeon, which is there. The next he talks about the python, and the python also, is the same example as little opposite example of the fire. The python just lies where it is, and whatever food comes its way, it eats, right? If it is a big cow that comes, it swallows the cow. If it's a small deer that comes, it swallows the deer. If nothing comes, it doesn't eat anything, right? It just stays there. So he says that's how we should be. Don't go around always looking for food. Think it is God's arrangement that day, that today you're going to get bisibela bath. That means that's what you're going to eat. Tomorrow you're going to get katrikai, which I don't like. So that's what I have to eat, right? So that's it. Imagine whatever you get, that is what it is. And don't go around looking for food all the time, because that's one of the big hindrance, right? Because we are not able to control our senses, especially the taste, right? So that's the second one, which is the thing which is there. Then third one he talks about here is the ocean. Right, he says when there is winter, when there's rain, and all the rivers are flooding, and the flooded rivers all go and merge into the ocean. In summer, the rivers dry up. Whatever leftover water is there is also going and merging into the ocean. But the ocean generally always remains filled. Have you ever seen an ocean which has got out of water? No, it's always full, right? So he says that's how you should be. When things are coming your way, you should be the same way as when things are not coming your way. So think of the ocean as your mind, and the river as whatever things you are getting. So we all get happy when what we want comes. We get really sad when what we want doesn't come. So he says, be like the ocean. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it comes. You still remain stable, right? Your mind remains stable. So that's what he's saying about the ocean here. And then the next one, I think here, which one is talking about the Shikini Shalabo? Okay, like a moth. So he says, like how, the men, men, women, doesn't matter, right? You get attracted to the opposite gender. And he says, when you get sucked into it and consumed into it, it is like a moth which gets attracted to a fire, and it ends up straight into the fire, and it ends up burning itself. So he says you should also learn to control your senses that way, so you don't get too attracted, right? And the last one, I think in this he talks about is like a honeybee. So there are a set of honeybees which go and collect honey from, each of the things. Then there are other honeybees which sit in a thing and build up all the honey, right? And then what happens? Somebody comes and the honey gatherer comes, takes all the honey and goes. So he says, similarly, you end up accumulating all this wealth, which you don't use towards charity, which you don't use towards good things. At the end of the day, you're going to lose all your money when the market crashes, right? So he says that's why at least use it, put it to good use, right? That's the fifth one here. Okay, so Snehat Vyadhat Putra Pranaya Mrita Kapothayito, that's one word, Kapothayito Ma Sma Bhuvam. So that entire line is together, comma at the end. Praptam Prashnan Saheya Shudamapi Shayuvat, comma, Sindhu Vat Syamaghadaha. Snehat Vyadhata Putra Pranayamrita Kapotayito Masma Bhuvam प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सहेय क्षुधमपि शयुवत् सिन्धुवत् श्यामगाधः
स्नेहादव्याधातस्तपुत्र व्यसनमृतकपो तायितो मास्म भुवन् प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सहेय क्षुधमपि शयुवत् सिन्धुवत् सिन्धुवत् श्यामगाधः.
A couple of on the first line la putra kapram pranaya. I think you said a different word altogether.
It is vyasana here.
Okay, can you change it to pranaya?
Pranaya. Okay.
And then
Pranayam.
yeah, pranaya mrita. And then the first word snehad, id, not fulda. Yeah.
Snehadav. So it's snehadavya.
Snehad vyadhat.
Okay. Snehadvyadhasthaputra pranayamritakapo tayito masma bhuvan praptam prashnan saheyam shudamapi shayuvat sindhuvat syama gadaha.
The second, first line end bhuvam, im. And then third line la saheya. There is no saheyam there.
Saheya, sorry.
स्नेहात् व्याधात् पुत्रप्रणयमृत
Kapotayito.
मास्म भुवं प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सहेय क्षुधमपि शयुवत् सिन्धुवत् श्यामगाधः. स्नेहात् व्याधात् पुत्रप्रणयमृतकपोतायितो मास्म भुवं प्राप्तं प्राश्नन् सहेय क्षुधमपि शयुवत् सिन्धुवत् श्यामगाधः.
मा पप्तं योषिदादौ शिखिनि शलभवत्, भृङ्गवत् सार bhagi long e put a plus bhuyasam so shalabhavat then bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam kintu tad vad dhana chayana vashan mahamisha pranesham ma paptam yoshidadau shikini shalabhavat bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam Kintu tadvad dhana chayana vashan mahamisha pranesham.
Mam paptam yoshidadau shikhini shalabhavat bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam kimtu tadvad dhana chayana vashan mahamisha pranesham. Ragam poittu.
That's okay. It's okay.
Ma paptvam yoshidado shikhini shalabhavat bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam kimtu tadvad dhanachayana vashan mahamisha pranesham.
Ma paptam yoshidadau shikhini shalabhavat bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam kintu tadvad dhanachayana vashan mahamisha pranesham.
Now, Ore Kacholram Prabha, last two lines, for tune purpose, Yun Rupa was asking. Ma paptam yoshidadau shikini shalabhavat bhringavat sarabhagi bhuyasam kintu tadvad dhanachayana vashan mahamisha pranesham.
मापाप्तं योषिदादौ शिखिनिशलभवत् भृङ्गवत्सारभागी भूयासं sorry
பூயாசம் அவ்வளவுதான் just
भूयासं किन्तु तद्वत् धनच्छयनवशा माहमीशा प्रणेशम्
Stanza 6. मा भध्यासं तरुण्या गज इव वशया नार्जयेयं धनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माद्वीहर इव मृगवन्मामुहं ग्राम्यगीतैः नात्यासज्जेय भोज्ये जश इव बलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुप्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यैर्न हन्यै. So next he talks about, about an elephant. So he talks about the same thing, like when the male elephant gets attracted to a female elephant, and the female elephant is surrounded by other male elephants, and this male elephant tries to go woo the other female elephant, all the other elephants end up beating this elephant down, right? So he says, unnecessarily, why are you going behind? Right? Learn the same example we saw last time about controlling the senses. And the second one here, actually, the last time when we talk about the honey bee, it was not around this saving, which comes here as a honey gatherer. Last stanza, the honeybee was because it goes from flower to flower to flower. He says that's how you're supposed to, like in the traditional monks, even now Buddhist monks, they go from house to house, right? And whatever they get in each house is what they eat. And they also have a rule, which is they shouldn't stay in one place for more than 2 days, because if they stay more 3 days, because if they stay in 3 days, they know, oh, if I go to this house, their sambar is good, right? And then you'll always end up going to that house. So they say in every house, you should only go take little at a time, and you go from house to house. That was the honeybee in the previous one. Here it talks about the honey gatherer who comes and takes all the money that you are holding, right? And then the other one it talks about here is like a fish, right? So how, when you, of course, you go fishing, right? Then you put a bait onto the fish, and the fish then tries to get onto the bait. At the end of the day, it is only for its own destruction, right? So it's not able to control itself. So it's catching on to that bait, and then, it gets caught. Then here, it talks about a prostitute called Pingala. So this prostitute, she's always waiting outside in the evenings, right? She's waiting outside the house, waiting for customers. And one night, it just so happened that she's been waiting for a long time and nobody comes, right? And then she's in a really bad state. It goes to the wee hours of the morning and absolutely nobody comes. And then so she herself starts thinking, what am I doing, right? So she finally gets so detached with what was happening that she comes to the realization. Because sometimes, when she was making the money and when people are coming, she was not realizing it because it was like a source of income. But when nobody came one day, she suddenly came to the realization that what am I doing? So he says, and she gave up everything, that wanting to accumulate wealth and wanting to do all that, she gave that away. So he gives an example of the prostitute who finally came to that realization. And then when she did that, she attained happiness. So but the idea being you give up, and that will give you more happiness. The same thing, it talks about another kurara eva. It's like another bird called kurara, the hawks. So when a hawk goes and gets a prey, all the other hawks come chasing them, right? You see that all the time. When you throw something, the dog also, everybody comes, all the other dogs come chasing. So one of these hawks, one day, what it did was, it was getting so stressed with all these hawks coming behind it, it just dropped the food. And the moment it dropped the food, it felt more relieved and happy. So he says the less things you are carrying with yourselves, the more happy you are. The more things you are carrying with you, the more stressful and thing is. That's the example quoted here. So ma bhadyasam tarunya gaja iva bashaya, narjayeyam dhanaugam, hartan yastam hi madvihara iva, mrigavanma muham gramya geetaihi. Ma bhadyasam tarunya gaja iva vashaya narjayeyam dhanaugham hartan yastam himadvi hara iva mrigavanma muham gramya geetaihi.
Ma badhyasam tarunya gaja iva vashya Ma badhyasam tarunya gaja iva vashayam narjayeyam dhanogam Haryan yastam hi
Adanyanga Rupa. Hartanyastam.
sorry, yeah. Hartan yastam hi madvi hara iva mrigavanma muham gramya gitaihi ma badya sam tarunya gaja iva vashayam najayeyam dhanogham hartan yastam hi madvi hara iva mrigavanma muham gramya gitaihi.
मा बध्यासं तरुण्या गजैव विषया नार्जयेयं दनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माध्वी हरैव मृगवन्मामुहं ग्राम्यगीतैः मा बध्यासं तरुण्या गजैव विषया नार्जयेयं दनौघं हर्तान्यस्तं हि माध्वी हरैव मृगवन्मामुहं ग्राम्यगीतैः
Natya sajjeya bhojye jasha iva balishe, comma, Pingala van nirashaha. Put a plus and the is there. So Pingala van nirashas supyam bhartavya yogat, comma, Kurara iva vibho samishonyair na hanyai. Natya sajjeya bhojye jasha iva balishe Pingalavanirasha supyam bhartavya yogat Kurara iva vibho samishonyair nahanyai.
Natya sajjeya bhojye jasha iva badishe Pingalavanirasha supyam bhartavya yogat kurara iva vibho samishon yerna hanyai. Natya sajjeya bhojye jasha iva badishe
Balishe.
badishe.
Balishe. La, L.
It says da here for me.
Okay, just like a bait, like a sacrifice. Balishe.
Okay. Natya sajjeya bhojye jasha iva balishe Pingalavanirasha supyam bhartavya yogat kurara iva vibho samishon yerna hanye.
नात्या सज्जेय भोज्ये जशैव बलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुप्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरैव विभो सामिशोऽन्यैर्नहन्यै
Last line, la kurara. Double ra.
इव विभो
Kurara.
नत्या सज्जेय भोज्ये जशैव भलिशे पिङ्गलावन्निराशः सुप्यां भर्तव्ययोगात् कुरर इव विभो सामिशोऽन्यैर्नहन्यै.
Stop here today. Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. Sandhanandhavabodhatmakamanupamitam Kaladeshavadebhyam Nirmuktam Nityamuktam Nigamashatasahasrena Nirbhasyamanam Aspashtam Drishtamatre Punarurupurushartatmakam Brahmatattvam Tattavad Bhadi Sakshat Guru Pavanapure Hanta Bhagyam Jananam काहेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. Thank you everybody. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.